Don't let it fool you outside. If you have looked outside and been like, oh, it's dry, don't expect that to stay that way. We're picking up rain chances as we speak right now. Temperatures are in the 40s, mid to upper 40s for a lot of us. But once the rain kicks in here in about 45 minutes to an hour, at least here in the Key City, it's moving in from the south right now. We'll be dropping our temperatures to those mid 40s to start the day. 80% chance of rain all day. Another kind of dreary, wintry kind of day, although it won't be as cold today with high temperatures back to those mid to upper 40s. That's your First Bank Texas forecast first. KTAB Daybreak starts now.
With coverage you can count on. This is KTAB News Daybreak.
Good Wednesday morning, and thanks for joining us here for KTAB Daybreak. I'm Kathleen Barkley.
And I'm Ron Rasood. Too much rain in central Texas. Rivers there are raging out of their banks and homes have been swamped. Roads and bridges washed away. That is our top story here on KTAB Daybreak.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott has declared a state of disaster after floods ravaged 18 counties in central Texas. Officials say that flooding is responsible for the death of one person. Laura Podesta reports.
Historic. That's what officials are calling flood levels in central Texas. The Llano River in Junction has swollen above 30 feet, causing road closures and evacuations. Officials shut down this bridge over the Colorado River after one person died, leaving residents in Llano County in shock.
I've never seen this high. 96 and 97 were both pretty good flood, but I believe this is a lot more.
Farther east, near Austin, a school bus driver was arrested after he drove around a barricade and over a low water crossing. A 12-year-old student on board needed to be rescued from swift waters. 4 floodgates are trying to relieve pressure by pushing water out of Lake Travis and into Lake Austin. Crowds flock to see the sheer power of the operation.
It's a pretty big deal. I mean, it's interesting to watch. It's a neat system that we have set up to keep this, the Central Texas Austin from flooding, and it's also very powerful and amazing to watch.
The rain is also causing issues in other parts of Texas. The Fort Worth Fire Department says it responded to more than 80 traffic accidents yesterday because of the weather conditions.
And those wet roads contributed to about a dozen traffic accidents in Abilene on Tuesday. Roads are more slippery, of course, when they're wet. There were no serious injuries reported in those crashes.
Stormwater is filling up the lakes. Lake Abilene now is at 100% capacity. That's the first time in 2 years that the lake in central Taylor County has been full. Lake Fort Phantom Hill is over the spillway. Lake Stamford is several feet over the spillway with homes on the north side flooded. Possum Kingdom is getting close to full with all that rain over that part of North Texas. Lake Brownwood is surprisingly only about 68% of capacity, and the O.H. Ivy Reservoir is one of the area lakes that still has a long way to go.
And we now continue to follow the 2 murder trials, one in Anson and in Abilene. The trial in Anson now in the punishment phase.
Prosecutors there are calling witnesses in the case against 24-year-old Dylan Gage Compton. They're asking the juries to sentence Compton to be executed for the murder of Corrections Officer Mary Ann Johnson. The 2 sons of the victim testified about their grief over the violent death of their mother on Tuesday. Other officers at the French Robertson prison testified about Compton when he was an inmate at that prison near Hamby. The medical examiner who conducted the autopsy testified that the 55-year-old victim suffered more than 130 injuries. The testimony in the punishment phase continues this morning in the Jones County Courthouse. Officials there say the punishment phase could take several weeks.
And in an Abilene murder trial, prosecutors are building their case against a man accused of shooting and killing a woman more than 2 years ago. Kendra Kepler was found dead in an Abilene apartment in May of 2016. She was killed by a gunshot wound to the head. 38-year-old Charles Newman is charged with murder in that case. The trial started Monday with jury selection. Updates on both of these trials can be found online at bigcountryhomepage.com.
Our KTAB Daybreak news time is now 6:04. Coming up, Abilene parents are pushing for transportation to after-school programs, and the hurricane knocked out service. So some big cell phone companies have agreed to stop the charges for their service to some customers in the Florida Panhandle.
That's all coming up, but first let's check back in with Dylan for another look at our forecast.
Thanks, Kathleen. As we speak, rain chances and rain are actually moving in from the south. Max Live radar, you see the edges of very light mist, maybe some sprinkles out there here in the Key City. That will continue all day. See some heavier stuff to the south that's heading our way. Bundle up and grab a jacket. Again today, rain gear is in for the afternoon and morning. I'll look at that forecast coming up next.
Now, meteorologist Dylan Smith with your Weather Authority forecast.
All right, so in Abilene right now, no rain falling, which, it doesn't feel as cool as it did yesterday.
Yeah, this morning not anywhere near as unpleasant so far.
Those rain chances coming back in.
They're coming
quickly.
back. Yeah, exactly. We might actually be misting outside right now, if anything.
Yeah.
So just something to keep in mind. Grab the rain jacket, grab the heavier gear again. You're going to want it. Maybe not necessarily for the whole week, but at least for today.
All right.
So let's take a look at what's going on across the U.S. Again, nice long line of showers, basically from Abilene all the way to the East Coast. Not necessarily the heaviest line of showers, but there is actually a bit of a weak front just to our south there, extending all the way to the East Coast. And again, most of the activity, though, here in Texas is centered either just south of us or east of us. And we are still seeing some here in the Big Country. Over the last 30 minutes or so, we've seen this little line of showers down to the south build in. And as I said, it could even be misting or sprinkling outside right now. It was a pretty dry night. Now we're changing all that today. We're looking at rain chances moving in for the rest of the day, about 80% for a lot of Abilene and a lot of the Big Country today. So don't expect to be dry, at least for the entire day. You'll see at least a few sprinkles likely. 48 degrees outside. Not the coldest start to the day. It's about 12 degrees warmer than just 2 mornings ago. But these temperatures will actually drop a couple of degrees once we start to see the rain here in the next 30-45 minutes or so. So something to keep in mind. Still not one to take out t-shirt and shorts for the day, but you could still maybe get away with just a heavy raincoat or anything like that. But just do whatever's comfortable for you, I'll say that. Lower 50s up in the north and now west, and upper 40s down in the southern half of the Big Country and the heartland. Things will start to drop again as the rain chances start to kick in. We are starting to see rainfall here in Abilene, and temperatures staying fairly mild today, but still pretty chilly down there in the upper 40s, likely to set another record cold day again here in the Big Country when it comes to high temperatures. So something to keep in mind there. Upper 40s still pretty chilly for this time of year. Tomorrow getting back to tolerable for the afternoon, mid-50s, and then by the weekend, we're looking to be in the 60s for most of it. Rain chances do fall off by the weekend. Going to be one of the first really kind of nice weekends we've had in I don't know how long. It's been 2 months or so since we've not had any big rain chances or something like that. So it's been a while. Rain chances will continue throughout the day. Again, some heavier stuff at times, mostly right around lunchtime, maybe in the afternoon hours will be the heaviest stuff. But again, even the light annoying things like the very light mist, that will stick around all day. Heading into tonight, again, expecting more development on top of that. If you noticed, a lot of that was in kind of a single band, and that's where we start to see one of these models pick up maybe another inch or two between today and the next 24 hours or so. So something to keep in mind. Still a fairly wet day in general for a lot of us here in the big country. 48, definitely not the warmest day outside. Not super chilly either, though we have been a lot colder over the past couple days. 80% chance for rain. Brownwood today, 90% chance of rain for you guys. Very, very wet all day. 48 this afternoon. Going to be, again, a fairly, I don't know, very wet day. Not necessarily the most pleasant, but we will start to improve heading into the weekend and back end of the week. Ron, over to you.
Thank you, Dylan. One of the world's wealthiest businessmen has agreed to pay a huge fine, and big cell phone companies offering a break for the victims of Hurricane Michael. Diane King Hall has this morning's Money Watch report.
A federal judge is giving a stamp of approval to Tesla founder Elon Musk's $40 million settlement with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The penalty was issued after Musk's provocative tweet about taking Tesla private, which isn't happening. Musk also has to give up his seat as Tesla's chairman for at least 3 years, but will be allowed to hold on to his CEO post. Verizon is giving a 3-month credit to customers in 2 hurricane-ravaged counties in Florida. The action comes after Governor Rick Scott slammed the company for its slow pace in restoring telecommunications service following last week's storm. AT&T is also offering service credits to customers. And viewers are still binging on Netflix. The video streaming service added 7 million subscribers from July to September, beating its own and Wall Street's expectations. The company's stock soared double digits in after-hours trading after its results were released. And that's your CBS Money Watch report. For more, head to cbsmoneywatch.com. At the New York Stock Exchange, I'm Diane King Hall.
Our KTAB Daybreak News Time now is 6:12. Coming up, some high school students are standing up, literally, for their Cooper coach after she was demoted for having a baby. And we have a look at both sides of the Abilene Independent School District's bond issue. Stay tuned as KTAB Daybreak continues.
Good morning. Who is it that you work for? You might be saying, well, Phil, this such and such business, the school, whatever, you know, I'm self-employed. But often on applications, we're asked to state who our employer is. Who do we work for? And I got to thinking about that might begin to change how we approach our work of what Paul says in Colossians. He says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as if working for the Lord and not for some other kind of boss. Now, I don't recommend that on an employment application or when you're asked to state that you put, you know, employer, the Lord. But I would suggest that we begin to think, who is it we really work for? Who's given us everything we have? Who's so generous to us? And so, you know, maybe you don't work in the best conditions, or maybe you don't get along with your boss. But you see, you have somebody, the Lord that you work for today, and He's a good boss. He loves you. He's there to support and to encourage you today in whatever you're doing. And so that's one reason why we can work with our whole hearts for Him. Because you see, we've been called to please Him first, as well as to know how He comes to walk right alongside of us today. Whatever job you're going to, He's with you. And to remember today to think, look over by the side of you to say, I'm working for Him with my whole heart.
KTAB News Daybreak continues.
Rain is moving into the area, at least here in Abilene, as it has continued to develop from the south as we were expecting and still expecting basically all day today. Big chance of rain, about 80% for a lot of us. So expect another wet day ahead as it's not looking to be the most pleasant. However, the good news is we are a little bit warmer this morning than yesterday morning by about 5 degrees or more, actually closer to 10 degrees for a lot of us as we are back in the mid to upper 40s, which is a nice change from just a couple of days ago where we were only in those mid to upper 30s. Lower 50s up in the northern parts and 47 down there for Brownwood and the Heartland. We are looking at a fairly mild day, not necessarily the coldest day, not necessarily the warmest day by any means, but around 49 to 50 degrees. I'm saying the range I'll be expecting is about 47 to 51 for a lot of us for afternoon highs. Once that rain kicks in, it will cool us off and really moderate those temperatures. It's going to be another very cloudy day as well, not as windy though, so there is some good news in all of that. I'll have a look at that forecast coming up in a few minutes, but first, let's send it back to the desk.
Thanks, Dylan. Some Abilene parents say they need help getting their children from school to the city's recreation centers for after-school care. The Parks and Recreation Board is talking about transportation for students to the after-school programs. Schools like Bonham and Mann Middle School do not offer transportation to the rec centers, causing children to walk or find a different way to get there. Some parents say adding bus routes from the schools to the recreation center would be a more affordable option for after-school care.
Some Abilene students are standing up for their high school coach. The school district has reassigned Coach Kelly Garcia when she was pregnant with her child. Garcia says she was demoted. She's appealing that decision to take the job of head track and field coach from her. She was recently reassigned to the assistant soccer coach. She still is the head coach for cross country. Former coaches and some Cooper athletes asked the school board to give the job back.
I would not be where I'm at in life without her at all. I would not be in college without Coach Garcia. I'm trying not to tear up, but like she said, it breaks my heart that she's going through this. That she is an awesome lady and she deserves this job.
School district officials say they can't say much since it's a personnel matter. Their statement was Coach Garcia continues to serve as head coach of the Cooper High School girls cross-country team as the Lady Cougars prepare for their upcoming regional meet. She also currently serves as assistant coach for the girls soccer team.
KTAB is your local election headquarters, and early voting for the November 6th election starts on Monday. Voters in the Abilene Independent School District have a big bond issue on their ballot. The proposal is to finance school improvements with bonds totaling almost $140 million. That money would pay for improvements and updates in several campuses as well as 3 new elementary school buildings. It would require a property tax increase to pay for those improvements. Our KTAB Daybreak News Time is now 6:18. Still ahead this morning, we'll take a look at the historic flooding right here in the Lone Star State, and we'll tell you about some new regulations making it easier for patients to know what to expect before they go to the drugstore.
First, though, let's check in with Dylan for a look at our weather forecast.
Thanks, Ron. Rain is moving into the area. Not necessarily the heaviest or strongest stuff, but it's enough to get the ground wet, make the road slippery again, and just kind of create that colder feel for the morning hours. So I'll look at that forecast for today and this upcoming weekend, just a couple days away, coming up next.
Now, meteorologist Dylan Smith with your Weather Authority forecast.
It's been a drier night overall for a lot of us. Over the past couple of days, we picked up about 1.5 or 2 inches of rain in some spots here in the big country, and more is on the way for a lot of us. Lots more rain where that came from starting to develop again here in the southern half of the big country and now moving into the I-20 corridor and north. So just something to keep in mind. Grab that rain gear, grab that, I'd say a moderate jacket at least, as we are still fairly cool this morning in the upper 40s out there. Definitely not cold, but still a little bit on the chilly side for some. About 5 to 10 mile-an-hour winds, so not terribly strong winds either. However, don't expect these temperatures to start climbing a whole lot. So if you grab a jacket, you'll probably want it all day, as rainfall and rain chances will cool us off for the afternoon hours. We are looking to start out again fairly mild, at least the past couple of days compared. We are in the upper 40s and lower 50s for the entire big country. And as that rain moves in, it will either stunt our temperatures to rise or even drop them by a couple of degrees, a few degrees at most. So just something to keep in mind. Temperatures are going to top out today in those upper 40s, lower 50s. Tomorrow back up to the mid 50s. And then for Friday and the weekend, we do lose our rain chances by Sunday and likely Saturday. Most of the rain chances will be to the south again, but we'll be in the 60s starting Friday. So that's going to really be a nice weekend. Still below seasonal by about 10 to 15 degrees, but better than 30 or 40 below. So I'll take that any day of the week for that matter. Futurecast shows again more widespread showers, maybe even a couple of storms, if not just heavy rain at times throughout the entire day today. You can see it just kind of trains in a pattern basically from San Angelo all the way up through Throckmorton County, and will continue to fall for most of the day today, with widespread rainfall expected of about at least ½ inch into the outlying counties. Otherwise, where it does fall the most, maybe about another inch or two within the next 24 hours. So still a fairly wet forecast in store for today. Tomorrow, at least going to be a little bit drier, but still kind of wet. Upper 40s out there for Abilene today. 80% chance for rain throughout the entire day today, starting essentially right now. So just something to keep in mind. Grab your rain gear. Upper 40s for Brownwood today, a 90% chance for rain for you guys. And those temperatures finally starting to climb back out of these cold territories and closer to the more acceptable territories for this time of year. But rain chances finally seeing some sunshine by Saturday, maybe even Friday. But the best chance for no rain will be the weekend.
That looks great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hang in this week and the weekend looks beautiful.
Oh, yes.
Big yellow thing up
yes.
there.
Well, a new proposal from the Trump administration is aimed at making drug prices more transparent for consumers.
Federal health officials want drug companies to include the list of prices on the medications. That proposal would apply to all brand name drugs covered by Medicare and Medicaid. That's most prescription medicines.
Chip Reed has the details.
Little Elijah, just 5, needs a drug with a big price tag, nearly $300,000 a year. Living with a life-threatening condition, Elijah was just 3 when he landed in the hospital.
He was screaming, "Mommy, why am I here? Mommy, please take me home."
After his family couldn't, and their insurance company wouldn't, cover the cost of a key drug.
People are cutting their pills in half. They are going without food. They're being hospitalized, and they're even dying because they can't afford the prescription drugs. That happened to us, and it's happening all over the country.
President Trump has said drug companies are getting away with murder.
One of my greatest priorities is to reduce the price of prescription drugs.
I've always looked forward to what's next.
Now the Trump administration wants to add to these ads, forcing drug makers to put right on the screen the price patients could pay for a 30-day supply. But drug companies have another idea.
We're concerned that if you just have the list price in isolation in the ad, it may deter patients from seeking needed care.
Instead, offering to point patients to websites listing each drug's price, estimated out-of-pocket costs, and any available discounts. The industry is meeting surprise resistance from President Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary, Alex Azar, a former drug company executive.
But placing information on a website is not the same as putting it right in an ad.
We think our approach is the better way.
Better for consumers?
Yes.
Do you think you're going to be able to convince Secretary Azar of that and, more importantly, President Trump?
I hope so.
But already families like Elijah's say it's not enough.
Listing the drug price in direct-to-consumer advertising is not going to lower drug prices.
Elijah's mother was so frustrated with the cost of his drugs that she moved her family of 4 here to Washington, D.C. so that she could advocate for affordable drugs. And they just got some good news. The insurance company is going to pick up the cost of a drug that would have cost her $250,000 a year. Chip Reed, CBS News, Washington.
And there are still some details to be worked out on those new rules.
Our next half hour is now right around the corner. People in Central Texas waiting for the water levels to go back down, hoping for the chance to dry out. Murder trials continue in Abilene and Anson. And
some high school athletes stand up to support their coach, and doctors have some new recommendations for the best way to take care of sick babies. KTAB Daybreak at 6:30 is coming up.
Now, from your weather authority, your KTAB Forecast First.
Good Wednesday morning, Big Country. We did get a brief break from rain overnight, but it is picking up basically right now for us here in the Key City and everybody south of the I-20 corridor. Today, expect another wet day ahead. 80% chance for rain throughout the entire day with some heavier stuff today than yesterday, at least, with most of us starting out in those mid to upper 40s. At least once that rain kicks in, we'll drop a few degrees, but it is a warmer start than yesterday, and this afternoon getting up closer to 50 for a lot of us. That's your First Bank Texas Forecast First. KTAB Daybreak starts now.
With coverage you can count on, this is KTAB News Daybreak.
Good Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us here for KTAB Daybreak. I'm Kathleen Barkley.
And I'm Ron Rousseau. There has been too much rain in Central Texas. Rivers there raging out of their banks. Homes have been swamped. Roads and bridges washed away. That is our top story on KTAB Daybreak.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott has declared a state of disaster after floods ravage 18 counties in Central Texas. Officials say that flooding is responsible for the death of one person. Laura Podesta reports.
Historic. That's what officials are calling flood levels in Central Texas. The Llano River in Junction has swollen above 30 feet, causing road closures and evacuations. Officials shut down this bridge over the Colorado River after one person died, leaving residents in Llano County in shock.
I've never seen this high. 96 and 97 were both pretty good flood, but I believe this is a lot more.
Farther east, near Austin, a school bus driver was arrested after he drove around a barricade and over a low water crossing. A 12-year-old student on board needed to be rescued from swift waters. 4 floodgates are trying to relieve pressure by pushing water out of Lake Travis and into Lake Austin. Crowds flock to see the sheer power of the operation.
It's a pretty big deal. I mean, it's interesting to watch. It's a neat system that we have set up to keep this, the Central Texas Austin from flooding, and it's also very powerful and amazing to watch.
The rain is also causing issues in other parts of Texas. The Fort Worth Fire Department says it responded to more than 80 traffic accidents yesterday because of the weather conditions.
And wet roads here in Abilene contributed to about a dozen traffic accidents on Tuesday. The roads are, of course, more slippery when they are wet. There were no serious injuries reported in any of those crashes.
Stormwater is filling up the lakes. Lake Abilene now is at 100% capacity. That's the first time in 2 years that the lake in central Taylor County has been full. Lake Fort Phantom Hill is over the spillway, and Lake Stamford is several feet over the spillway, with homes on the north side of the lake flooded. Possum Kingdom is getting close to full with all that rain over that part of North Texas. Lake Brownwood surprisingly only recording about 68% of capacity, and the O.H. Ivy Reservoir is one of the area lakes that still has a long way to go.
And we continue to follow 2 murder trials in Anson and Abilene. The trial in Anson now in the punishment phase.
Prosecutors there are calling on witnesses in the case against 24-year-old Dylan Gage Compton. They're asking the jury to sentence Compton to be executed for the murder of Corrections Officer Mary Ann Johnson. The 2 sons of the victim testified about their grief over the violent death of their mother Tuesday. Other officers at the French Robertson prison testified about Compton when he was an inmate there at the prison near Hamby. Medical examiner who conducted the autopsy testified that the 55-year-old victim suffered more than 130 injuries. The testimony in the punishment phase continues this morning. At the Jones County Courthouse, officials there say the punishment phase could take several weeks.
And in Abilene, a murder trial, prosecutors are building their case against a man accused of shooting and killing a woman more than 2 years ago. Kendra Kepler was found dead in an Abilene apartment in May of 2016. She was killed by a gunshot wound to the head. 38-year-old Charles Newman is charged with murder in that case. The trial started Monday with jury selection. Updates on both of these trials can be found on our website, bigcountryhomepage.com.
And you're right on time. It's now 6:35. Coming up on KTAB Daybreak, parents at 2 Abilene elementary schools pushing for more buses for their kids. And the 2 candidates running for senator had their televised debate last night. We have some highlights coming up.
First, though, let's check back in with Dylan for a look at our Wednesday morning forecast.
Thanks, Kathleen. Rain is moving into the Key City this morning, so as you head out the door, grab a jacket and under the umbrella or some kind of rain gear, as again, it's going to be a fairly wet day again all day, similar to yesterday for a lot of us. Luckily, just not quite as cold. I'll have a look at that forecast coming up next.
Now, meteorologist Dylan Smith with your Weather Authority forecast.
Well, the city limit sign says it's Abilene.
That it does. It feels like we're more in like North Dakota.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's not like what I remember you most of the time.
No, it's not. We've been unusually cold. Actually, 2 days in a row we've set record cold high temperatures for ever since history's been recorded here in Abilene. So again, it's been very cold today, likely breaking another record cold temperature, but we finally break out of that trend tomorrow.
That's good. I'm ready.
I am too. Believe me, this weekend, looking forward to it. I'll show you what's going on. Let's take a look at what's going on across the U.S. right now. We actually have a boundary in the southern half of the U.S., just south of the big country, that's been bringing a lot of south central Texas where they've seen all that flooding, all the consistent rain. That's where we've been seeing our rain from, and it stretches basically from Abilene all the way over to the east coast there. So just something to keep in mind. That is going to continue to bring us rain today, and that's where we're seeing our rain chances pop up this morning. It has been moving in from the south near San Angelo all the way up through the southern parts of the big country. Now at least likely sprinkling here in Abilene and a lot of the big country south of the I-20 corridor and down in the heartland as well. You guys have been wet basically all night, but the rest of us have been pretty dry so far today. That is changing heading into the rest of the afternoon and morning hours for that matter. Upper 40s out there, not as cold as yesterday to start by as much as about 10 degrees. So that is an improvement, but just be aware, wind still out there, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Rain chances starting up right now and will stick around for the entire day. And temperatures starting out a little bit more mild than the past couple of days, but still fairly chilly in those upper 40s and lower 50s to start the day. That's about where we're actually going to stay for the entire day as well, because once the rain kicks in, that cloud cover staying thick and consistent, that is going to again keep us very moderated today when it comes to those temperatures. We're talking upper 40s, lower 50s all day today. Tomorrow back to the mid 50s, and then by Friday and through the weekend it will vary, but generally in the 60s, maybe some lower 70s by Saturday, but that is still well below our average temperature of upper 70s there. Rain chances finally start to go away, see a little bit more of that yellow ball in the sky and a little bit less of the gray skies that we've been seeing by the weekend. Just expect a few more gray, dreary days ahead, and that will continue today. As you can see, lots of widespread rain expected on the futurecast there for most of the day. Maybe some breaks here and there, but again, some heavier stuff at times. It might even be heavier than yesterday, and yesterday we saw some fairly heavy rain here in Abilene, and that trend again is going to be more of a big line from essentially San Angelo all the way up through Breckenridge, Throckmorton counties there. About an inch or 2 inches expected for the higher end of things. A lot more areas seen maybe a quarter of an inch to a half inch, such as the heartland and up to the north and northwest. Just something to keep in mind. Still going to be pretty wet all day, so grab that jacket, grab the rain gear for today. 48 outside this afternoon, 80% chance of rain. Brownwood today as well, 48 degrees for you guys this afternoon as well. 90% chance for rain, mostly rain, less storms out there, but just expect this weekend and early next week to be a little bit more pleasant than this past weekend and early this week was. That is almost a guarantee. Ron or Kathleen, over to you.
All right, thanks, Dylan. The time now is 6:41. Still ahead this morning, a Cooper High School teacher says she was demoted after having a baby. How students are showing their support. Our KTAB's Claire Kreitz reports next. And doctors have some new recommendations for babies with lung issues. Our medical headlines are coming up when KTAB Daybreak continues.
KTAB News Daybreak continues.
Well, if you woke up even 45 minutes ago, looked outside, saw it was dry, you might think, oh, I don't need a jacket today. Well, that is starting to change and will continue to change for the entire day. Rain is falling here in Abilene and a lot of the big country, at least south of the I-20 corridor. It is expected to expand up to the north later today, at least even by this early morning. And so it's just something to keep in mind. You can see outside the ground is now wet. We have some light to moderate rainfall falling here in the Key City right now. The roads are wet, so be prepared for that. Again, another slick day out there for a lot of us here in the big country today. Temperatures luckily not as cold as yesterday this morning, but we are looking to be in the mid to upper 40s for a lot of us. Some lower 50s out there to the north, just barely, but enough to warrant that 50-degree temperature there. But we are also looking at temperatures basically staying where we're at right now. Because of the rain starting up, it will kind of cool our temperatures off or just keep them from rising at all. So we're looking at upper 40s, some lower 50s out there for the afternoon hours as well. Rain chances are in all day, so be prepared for another very wet, kind of dreary, wintry kind of day, unfortunately. That is starting to change by the weekend, though, so I have some good news in the forecast. I'll tell you that. That's all coming up in a few minutes, but first, let's send it back to the desk.
Thank you, Dylan. Some Abilene parents are asking for help to get their kids to the after-school programs.
That's right. The city recreation centers are open, but it's difficult for some children to get to those centers if they don't live in the area served by the buses that go to their schools. KTAB's Jessica Rank reports.
The final bell has rung and it's time for these students to head home. And for some, that means making a stop at a city rec center for after-school care.
They really enjoy going to the after-school care program.
As many other AISD parents agree. But for those students at Bonham and Mann, getting there isn't as easy. Why? Lack of transportation.
It is up to parent, grandparent, friend, AISD, whomever, to transport the children from wherever they are in school to one of our locations.
The city says that's because the two schools don't offer busing, forcing parents to let their children either walk or find another convenient, more expensive option.
Well, $15 a month doesn't sound like a lot, but for some people, when you don't have $15, that's a lot. You would assume that because our program was free, you would assume that those after-school care programs would be full. But they weren't. They were about to close it down because there was nobody utilizing it. The reason being is because transportation was an issue.
The board has passed the issue on to City Council, recommending they look into a partnership with either CityLink or AISD to provide additional buses. In Abilene, with coverage you can count on, Jessica Rank, KTAB News.
Thank you, Jessica. The board also discussed dropping the age for children in those programs to 5 instead of 6 years old.
And a Cooper High School coach says she was demoted after she had a baby. Coach Kelly Garcia was the head track and field coach as well as the head cross country coach, but she was recently reassigned to assistant soccer coach.
So now she's appealing to the Abilene School Board, members of the track team literally standing up to support her. KTAB's Claire Kreitz has our Eye on Education report.
I'd just like to call out names very quickly of the people who've come to represent Coach Garcia, fellow coaches, fellow athletes, and past and present athletes.
With an outpour of support,
Haley Riley, Andrea Scott, Cammie Ivy.
Former track and field coach Kelly Garcia is fighting her reassignment.
I just know there's no one more dedicated to Cooper track and field than Coach Garcia.
With former athletes coming forward,
I would not be where I'm at in life without her at all. I would not be in college without Coach Garcia. I'm trying not to tear up, but like she said, it breaks my heart that she's going through this.
To peers and former coaches speaking on her performance not only as an outstanding track athlete for the Cougars and in college.
She earned an athletic scholarship to a Division I, Southwest Texas State, now Texas State. During her time there, she was a conference champion, and she was a member of 5 conference championship teams. She understands winning.
But also on the other side of the track, as a coach for her alma mater.
While in this position, she has taken more athletes to the state meet than any other coach in the last 30 years, maybe ever. Coach Garcia bleeds red and blue.
Her supporters having more questions than answers.
Why should she have to answer questions about who's going to take care of her baby while she's at a cross-country meet? It's outrageous.
After having a baby last year, Coach Garcia was removed as head track coach. My question is why?
Hoping their words and solidarity.
Sonia Brown, Beverly Jackson, and Bev Ball
will inspire change for See ya.
Thank you.
And we have more details on the story on bigcountryhomepage.com.
And KTAB is your local election headquarters. Early voting for the November 6th election starts Monday. Voters in Abilene Independent School District have a big bond issue that they'll see on their ballot. The proposal is to finance school improvements with bonds totaling almost $140 million. That money would pay for improvements and updates at several campuses, as well as 3 new elementary school buildings. It would require a property tax increase to pay for those improvements.
Voters all across Texas deciding on the office of U.S. Senator. Democratic U.S. Congressman Beto O'Rourke of El Paso is running against incumbent Republican Ted Cruz. The two men met for this debate on the issues last night in San Antonio. Cruz said last year's tax cut will not contribute to the nation's debt. O'Rourke challenged that and Cruz's vote on the nominations of Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court. Cruz leads in the polls. O'Rourke has raised a record $38 million in the last quarter to pay for his campaign. KTAB News will have extensive coverage of the election as the votes come in Tuesday, November 6th. We'll have coverage on air and on bigcountryhomepage.com.
Well, Americans are living longer, but not as long as people in other parts of the world, and there's some new guidelines for sick babies.
And Matt Piper has today's medical news headlines.
The United States showed the biggest decline in the nation's life expectancies rankings. For high-income countries, the U.S. dropped from 43rd in 2016 to 64th in 2040. The average lifespan was 78.7 years in 2016, but the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation study suggests Americans will live to be 79.8 in 2040 if current health trends continue. The study also forecasts the major causes of death will be diabetes, heart and kidney disease, and lung cancer in 2040. Severely obese people with diabetes were 40% less likely to have a heart attack or stroke within 5 years after bariatric surgery than those who did not have it. That's according to the Healthcare Systems Research Network study. The research also showed patients who had the surgery were less likely to develop heart disease. And revised guidelines suggest infants diagnosed with bronchiolitis should not undergo routine x-rays. Canadian researchers say it's a costly and unnecessary test that puts children at risk of radiation exposure. Despite the recommendation, analysis of hospitals in the U.S. finds emergency rooms were still using the procedure on infants from 2007 to 2015. That's a look at some of the day's top health stories. Matt Piper, CBS News, New York.
We have less than 10 minutes now until 7 o'clock. It's 6:52. We'll wrap up today's top stories coming up, and Dylan has another look at our Wednesday morning weather forecast.
And a note on the bottom of the calendar may give you an idea of what you want for lunch today. We'll explain when we come back.
I'm Nora O'Donnell. Coming up, John Dickerson's interview with House Speaker Paul Ryan as he makes a final push to help Republicans keep control of Congress. That's coming up on CBS This Morning. I'm Nora O'Donnell. Coming up, John Dickerson's interview with House Speaker Paul Ryan as he makes a final push to help Republicans keep control of Congress. That's coming up on CBS This Morning.
Before we join CBS This Morning, here's a look at our top stories. The stormwater continues to rage across central Texas. Several homes have been swamped. Roads and bridges are closed.
Murder trial continues for the Abilene man charged in the murder of Kendra Kepler. Prosecutors in Anson working to convince the jury there that the inmate who murdered corrections officer Mary Ann Johnson should be executed for the crime.
And students are taking a stand for their track coach after she was reassigned to be the assistant tennis coach.
And a look outside, at least a look at Max5 radar right now. We are again looking at a very wet day ahead as we are seeing some heavier rain move into Abilene right now. It is dropping a lot of rain and will continue for most of the day as either light to moderate and even heavy rain at times. You can see the ground now wet, even though most of the night we were pretty dry this morning. Now we are a little bit wet outside. Temperatures will continue to stay in those upper 40s, lower 50s all day today. Don't expect to get very warm. So again, if that's chilly to you, if that's cold to you, be prepared for it. Rain chances in all day today, about 80% chance for rain. Now by the weekend, we start to see a little bit more of that little ball of fire in the sky. And temperatures rebound a little bit, but still well below seasonal for the entire forecast period.
Usually this rain would be great news, but
we're actually over our average yearly rainfall total
already.
For years, so. Wow.
Before we leave you today, it's National Pasta Day. Pasta traditionally a starched dish in an Italian cuisine. People around the world have adopted it here in America and all around the world.
The first reference of pasta was made almost 1,000 years ago. The history dates back at least to 1154 in Sicily. Pasta is made from a mixture of flour, eggs, and water and formed into many different shapes.
Most of us like to cover with cream or tomato-based sauces and then add spices or meat for a huge number of possibilities. I can't really think of what my favorite is. Just a good old spaghetti meatball.
Yeah. Can't go wrong with
hard
some
to
pasta.
beat that. You bet.
Oh, yes.
That's it for now. Thanks for watching. For information on the stories in this newscast, go to bigcountryhomepage.com. Click on the link to KTAB TV News.
CBS This Morning's coming up. We'll be back at 7:26 with the latest news and weather.
Until then, have a great Wednesday.